Fiona. Fiona grew up in a highly abusive household marked by domestic violence, severe emotional abuse, and repeated suicide attempts by her mother, which Fiona witnessed. Despite exceptional academic ability, she developed serious mental health difficulties, self-harm behaviors, and suicidal ideation from a young age. After escalating abuse and failed disclosures, Fiona entered care at the age of 13. She was placed in a children's home that had already been identified as high risk for sexual exploitation in a television documentary prior to her arrival. Inadequate supervision meant she went missing repeatedly. At 13, she was groomed by adult Pakistani men whom she estimates were aged between 24 and 45. The grooming began with affection and alcohol, quickly progressing to rape, drug dependency, threats, and trafficking. Care staff negligence was extreme. Abusers would sit in cars outside waiting for the girls, openly converse with staff, and even phone the home to inquire about them. One care worker told Fiona's mother that her boss had described recording the men's car registration plates as, quote, above her pay grade, warning that she would lose her job if she did so. Fiona believes the staff were aware of what was happening but felt powerless to stop it rather than being actively complicit. Nevertheless, the children's home received £5,000 per week to care for her and failed miserably. Fiona suspects the management avoided proper investigation for fear of being labelled racist. Only the police took any formal action, issuing harbouring notices to the men, official warnings stating they had no permission to associate with, contact, or house a vulnerable child. However, no further action followed. When Fiona's mother called the police to report her daughter missing and mentioned a history of abuse by Asian men, the call handler told her, quote, "You can't describe them as Asian men because that's racist. You should just be glad your child is being taught a different culture." On one occasion, a police officer returned Fiona to the house where the abuse was occurring and told the men to, quote, "have fun with her." On another occasion, police instructed the abusers that if they could persuade Fiona to sign herself out of care, the police would stop bothering them. The gang then tried to convince her to do so, intending to traffic her to Kashmir. She was only prevented from leaving the country because she did not have a passport. Between 2008 and 2012, Fiona was repeatedly raped by multiple men connected to organized grooming networks. She was often kept in a house known as a party house, where between 10 and 20 men would attend at one time. On one occasion, she was encouraged to bring her friends because the owner had relatives visiting from Birmingham to celebrate Eid and, quote, expected girls to be there. Within the house, the girls were routinely referred to as, quote, white slags, while the men wanted Pakistani girls kept, quote, pure for marriage. The gangs reportedly discussed fears that the English Defence League, EDL, would arrive armed, so they kept baseball bats for protection. They also allegedly spoke of attending EDL demonstrations with weapons. Fiona was not only trafficked and raped across multiple cities in the UK, but was also forced to traffic drugs. Drugs, intimidation, and violence were used to control her. She was made to clean up the knives from the scene of 2 fatal stabbings. She was present during a shootout. Her abusers bragged to her that they had hidden dead bodies in a certain location. A few days later, Fiona recalls the news reporting on a body being recovered from the same location that the abusers had disclosed to her. As a result, threats of violence carried enormous weight. At 14, Fiona was abused by a man known as Rambo. He had entered Britain illegally in the back of a lorry. Previously castrated in Pakistan as punishment for child abuse, he had then fled to the Philippines, where he allegedly attacked multiple women and children with a large knife, the origin of his nickname. Rambo was locked in a room with 2 girls and subjected them to extreme sexual torture. This case illustrated that, in some instances, the sexual abuse of children was driven more by humiliation and control than by sexual gratification. At 15, Fiona became pregnant while in a mixed-sex care home. Her son was later removed and adopted due to the ongoing exploitation risks, yet Fiona herself was left in the same dangerous environment. The abuse continued into her adulthood. It only stopped when she turned 18, leaving her with profound physical and psychological trauma, including PTSD, substance dependency, and long-term health damage. Fiona states that the greatest harm came not only from the abusers, but from institutional disbelief, neglect, and punishment that actively enabled the ongoing exploitation. In total, she estimates she was abused by between 50 and 100 men. Of those, only 2 were not Pakistani. Fiona. I was beaten regularly. I was drugged, filmed being raped, and the footage was distributed. I sustained broken bones, facial injuries, and severe trauma. I was subjected to racial abuse in the community and blamed by families of perpetrators.